Welcome back to the Body Composition Coach podcast, episode 19. And this is one I've been looking forward to because today I am going to deliver the news that nobody wants to hear, but you probably all need to hear. Now, before we get into that, if you've been enjoying the podcast, if you've been a regular listener of ours, if you have found some value in the things that I'm sharing and the information we're giving you, then please, the least you could do, give us a review, give us a 5-star review. Let us know you're enjoying the podcast. Let us know that we've made a difference, we've made an impact, because that's why we do this, to try and make an impact on your lives and your journeys, on your training, nutrition, mindset. So please, if you're enjoying the podcast, give us a review, let us know, and I'd love to read them. Let's get into the delivery of the news, shall we? If we talk about the main reason that women come to us as a coaching company and ask us for help, it's usually for this reason: to be lean, toned, strong, powerful, take ownership of their body, low body fat, muscular, defined, however you want to describe it, right? Probably somewhere in there, perform at their best, feel like they've fulfilled their potential. That's fantastic because that's what we do. That's what we help people with. But how we do that is probably not how most people want to do it. Now, what I think people believe is going to happen when they come into our coaching system is we're just going to help you lose body fat. You're going to shred the body fat. It's going to disappear. There's going to be nothing left. You're going to be lean. You're going to be muscular. You're going to reveal those abs that have always been there. The reality is a little bit different. That's not because we can't do that. Of course we can do that. We can help you lose body fat, as effectively and efficiently as possible. But there is an underlying problem here for most people. And that is that most of you don't have as much muscle mass as you think you have. You might be looking at me now thinking, Jono, you don't have much muscle mass right now. And I do. I'm just very, very lean right now because I'm a week out from a photo shoot. So I might look tiny in this new t-shirt of mine that's a smaller size. The reality is I have more muscle mass. But this happens to a lot of people. As they lose body fat, they start to realize actually how little muscle mass they do have. What ends up happening with women who come to us is they're like, right, I want to look like this person that you trained. Okay, cool. You're going to have to commit to 12 months in a build phase, and they're out. They don't want to do it. Why would they? They've got to do the opposite to what they actually want, which is to look lean and toned and defined. And they got to eat more, and they got to train harder, and they got to pack some muscle on whilst probably gaining a little bit of body fat. And that's what they need to do first for a few months and even a year or more. And it's not the news that people want to hear. But what I want to go through with you today is why that's so important, and actually why you're wasting time not doing that versus, the fat loss that you think is just going to get you there quicker. So I suppose the elephant in the room is that most of you will probably listen to this thinking, well, I don't want to bulk, I don't want to build, I don't want to look like a strong man or a strong woman or a bodybuilder. That's not the look I'm going for. And believe me, if you gain 5 pounds of muscle in a year, you're lucky. And that's not a lot. That's not a lot. Of really hard, dedicated training and nutrition, you might gain 5 pounds. It's not much muscle. It will be barely noticeable, but it will make a difference to your end result. So first and foremost, we'll kind of throw that out. And I'm not going to talk about that today. Like if you're here listening to this podcast and you still believe that gaining muscle is what's going to make you look bulky and like a bodybuilder, you probably need to go and listen to the other 18 or so episodes that we've done so far. But so let's not talk about the bulky thing. You guys know by now that that's not the reality of the situation. What you probably don't accept yet, and hopefully you will after this session, is you're gonna need to do the build. You need to do a build. I will say it down the camera directly to you. You need to do a build phase. When you're looking for that lean toned physique, you can drop body fat. Anyone can drop body fat. No one gets to a point where they're so, you could get really, really lean to like 1% body fat and then there's nothing left, but you'd be dead at that point, right? So most people, they're maybe sitting around 20, 25% as a female, maybe even 30% as a female. As a male, maybe they're sitting around 10, 15%, but they want to get lean, like really lean. So they think, well, 2 + 2 = lose body fat, right? So as long as I lose body fat, I'm going to look lean. And especially with women, because we work generally just with women, if a woman loses like 5% body fat, maybe she gets down to the 20%, 19%, 18%, which is where you should look lean, there's disappointment. You don't look lean. You maybe, I've talked about this before, Maybe you look skinny fat. There's disappointment. And what happens is that woman does a bit more cardio. She eats a bit less. She tries to go harder with the fat loss generally. And then the result is disappointment again. She doesn't actually get the result she wants again. And why is that? Well, you're chipping away at something that doesn't need to be chipped away at. You're working at a problem that doesn't exist. Your body fat isn't the problem anymore. Getting lower body fat isn't revealing the physique that you wanted to reveal. And the reason it's not revealing that is because it's not there. It's not underneath. Because women generally, I haven't met many women who have been through a dedicated 6-month to 12-month build and built a significant, like, pounds and pounds of muscle so that when they do diet, it shows through. And that, for me, well, for you, that's the missing link. That is the secret to your success if you want to have a lean tone physique. It is committing to doing the build phase, not for a couple of months, not for 2-3 months. You need to get uncomfortable for the next year. You need to get uncomfortable maybe for the next 18 months. But it's about that delayed gratification, because in 18 months' time, when you've spent time a bit fluffy, you know, feeling like you're carrying a few extra pounds of body fat, but you've done the stuff that you need to do when it comes to muscle building to get the muscle that you need, and then you do your dieting phase, which should only be a short 2 or 3 months max, that's when you get the look that you want. And this is where people, or women generally, are not seeing the results that they want because they're not willing to commit to doing the difficult thing and feeling uncomfortable for a long period of time. But you can see how this weighs up, right? Because if you do that for a year, you have the look you want for forever, or the long term, as long as you maintain it, right? Whereas what's happening right now is you're spinning the wheels trying to lose body fat over and over again, and you're not getting there anyway. So who's wasting time here? So I suppose what might be useful for you is to kind of tell you what a build looks like. I'll talk to you about how we do a build with our clients. Now, usually what we'll do is, generally when a client comes in, we will do at least a tidy up phase. Now, that might be, we'll just spend some time learning training, learning nutrition, you know, going through some of the fundamentals and making sure you're prepared to go into the phase that you're going to go into, a build or a cut, depending on where you are. Then we will likely go into a deficit, a cut, a fat loss phase to get you leaner. And in getting you leaner, we create a starting point that we can start a build from. Now, the reason I like to get women leaner before we go into a build is for 2 reasons. One, it's like the lower body fat starting point gives us more wiggle room as we start to gain some body fat through the build before you start to feel really uncomfortable. So that's the first thing. But secondly, it's because I've still never met a woman, I've never worked with a woman within our coaching system who's really excited about a build. Mentally, builds are quite tough for women because they've been programmed over and over and over again over the years that smaller is better, lean is better, skinny is better. When you try and tell them to do the opposite, it often backfires and it doesn't sit very well. I personally like to get a woman lean before we start. So we'll do a short fat loss phase, maybe quite a short, intense fat loss phase, drop her body fat down initially, and then we'll start to go into the build. We will usually reverse diet people out. And this opens up a whole new topic on whether reverse dieting is actually useful. I believe it is, not only from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint. So science tells us that if you are eating 1,200 calories, that's your deficit, and your maintenance is at 1,600, there's actually no harm of you going from 1,200 right back to 1,600. That's what science tells us. For me, when you're bringing somebody out of a fat loss phase, the mindset is very different in a fat loss phase versus a build. So gradually bringing them out and keeping control of their habits, behaviors, nutrition habits, etc., is really, really important. So we can gradually edge them out. But also, I think it just gives us some time, some transition time, some time to grow into the next phase that they're going to be going through. As we bring up through the reverse diet, we get to maintenance. Usually what I will do then is sit somebody at maintenance for a period of time. Now, you're way more likely to build muscle when you're in a build. Like when you're in a fat loss phase, it's actually quite difficult to build muscle if at best you're actually trying to hold on to muscle, the muscle that you've already built. As you come up into a maintenance phase and you have the calories and the resources available to your body to build, you're way more likely at maintenance to build muscle. So it is pretty possible you could sit at maintenance for a while and you could build a decent amount of muscle. So we'll take a woman to maintenance usually. Now, what we'll then tend to do is just nudge And I call it like nudge. So we'll nudge them into that surplus. It might just be 100 calories to start with. It might be 200. And we never go that high. So 2, 3, maybe 400 calories into a surplus and keep them there. That's the nutrition side. And often some of you might be watching this and listening to this and thinking, cool, I just need to eat more calories and I'm going to gain the muscle I want. There's a problem. And the problem usually comes from most people don't train as well as they think they do. They don't train with execution as well as they think they do, but they also don't train with intensity as well as they think they do. They also don't really have a particularly good program when it comes to building muscle. They've just stuck some exercises together that they like and enjoy, lots of hip thrusts and squats and, maybe a few upper body movements. And they think that's it. Cool. That's going to build muscle, right? I'm lifting. Well, maybe not. I've seen women spinning the wheels for years in a surplus. And this is where it's frustrating, right? This is where women lose the plot with the build phase. It's because they're not doing the training that's required to build the muscle they need. They're not potentially living the lifestyle they need to live to build the muscle that they need, but they're eating a surplus. You can see where the problem's going to come in here, right? The problem then becomes you're eating a surplus, you're gaining body fat, but you're not building muscle and you're going backwards. I suppose the opposite end to that is what we started with, and that is that you could be eating very little and dieting all the time, but what's actually happening is you're losing muscle every time you're dieting, and you don't actually have enough muscle to show off the physique you have. So there's like two ends of the spectrum. There's too much dieting and losing muscle and not really building any, and then there's eating too much food and not doing the right training and therefore still not building muscle. So you're not building muscle either way, and you're just moving further away from the result every time. I've worked with many clients where this has been the situation. It's one, a physical battle, but also a mental battle. But the women that have had the most success, and you see our success stories all the time, you just got to go onto our Instagram to see some of the amazing things we've done with women in their 30s and 40s and 50s. Some insane results actually. And you've only got to see Instagram for that. But I can tell you now that every single one of those women who you've seen that's in insane shape has either done a build phase for a period of time before that result, or done a build phase in the past for a significant amount of time. So therefore they have that significant amount of muscle. So it's always an uncomfortable conversation to have, but hopefully in doing this podcast for you guys and sharing this with you, you'll understand that. And if you come in and choose to work with us and you want to come and learn how we do this and go through a build phase with us, understand the fundamentals of training, where you can actually get the most effective results out of your build phase, then, I'd welcome that. And at least you've had this pre-warning that, you might come and you might need to do 6 months to a year of being uncomfortable, growing muscle, but we're all about long-term results. And we could give you a 6-week shred. We could just strip away your calories, give you tons of cardio, promise you a result, and you probably see a scale result, but you'll be left unfulfilled because you won't have the result that you want. And I would imagine some of you are listening to this podcast now because you're unfulfilled and you haven't got the result that you want. And you're probably thinking, I've never done a build, not built significant muscle anyway. I don't really know my way around training as well as I probably tell people I do. And therefore, this guy's right. Maybe he's right. Maybe you do need to do a build. And some of you will go away from this podcast and still not do a build, still spin your wheels, still think that if you just lose a bit more body fat, if you just lose that little bit more body fat, you will have the result that you want. But I tell you now, at some point, you will come back around to this podcast or somebody else's podcast or some information somewhere, and eventually you'll commit to it and you'll be like, okay, I'm going to need to do a build. If I want the result that I say I want, if I'm really going to get there, I'm going to need to do a build. So look, hopefully this has been useful. Hopefully it's been useful, me kind of laying out how we do a build phase with women as a bit of an overview. Hopefully you've related to this a little bit. Maybe you've been stuck in that fat loss phase for a very long time, and you've understood that actually right now it's probably time to do a build, or at some point you're going to need to commit to a long-term build. And if that means you get better results over the next few years, which it will, look, I'm hoping that's the impact that it has. So look, if you found our podcast has impact for you, if you've really, really related to some of the things that we've talked about, if you want our help and you want to do a dedicated build, or maybe it's time for the fat loss phase for you, or maybe you don't even know which way you're supposed to be going right now. Is it a build? Is it a fat loss phase? What's going to get you the result that you want? Drop us a message, a DM, slide into my DMs, let me know, ask me for some help. We'll always be willing to talk to you. We'll always be willing to try and help where we can. And if we can't help you in terms of bringing you into the program, we'll always try and give you some advice and some help where possible. And again, If you've enjoyed the podcast, if you found it impactful, please leave us a 5-star review. Let us know that you've enjoyed it. And your kind words are always appreciated. And for now, until the next time, until episode 20, I'll see you then.